This is the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 17. We're looking at the squads of the 2023 Gold Cup. This is the full-length version for St. Kitts and Nevis's players. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is Series 17 on the players of the 2023 Gold Cup. And this episode covers St. Kitts and Nevis's players. Just a couple of notes before we begin. This media cast is in two parts. We did it in two separate podcasts for the World Cup, but this one we're putting it in one media cast, but it is in two parts. So the first is an overview of the candidates for the squad and our guess as to their likelihood of making it in. So for most of the teams in this Gold Cup, we did that in May, but for the teams that just joined through the playoffs, we did it a bit later. So we do know some information on their June games, but we don't know what the preliminary and final rosters look like. So that will be part two. The second part will be added on after those squad lists are released. And so that'll let you know who among the candidates actually did make the team, and also how accurate our predictions were. Okay, so we have never done a media cast on St. Kitts and Nevis's team. We did do the CONCACAF teams in the final round of World Cup qualifying and those who made it to the World Cup, but St. Kitts and Nevis was not in either of those. And just finally, how we proceed here. So we organize this by position. We put the players in their coded position. And we do realize that's not always accurate because players do change positions. And we will cover any surprises or any movements that we know about in part two of the show when we know the selections. Okay, let us begin. And we used to do a section for the World Cup on formations that they've been using. We thought that was kind of pointless for this series. So we just point out anything that is kind of pertinent. In this case, the pertinent fact is that St. Kitts and Nevis came from League C of the CONCACAF Nations League. So League C is the weakest league, but the winners of the groups in League C kind of get a golden ticket to the playoffs. We call it a golden ticket because some of the League B teams don't get that. So St. Kitts and Nevis in 2021 was relegated to League C. They were in a group with Grenada, French Guiana, Belize, and St. Kitts and Nevis, and they finished last in the group and were relegated to League C. Now they really are a better team than that, probably a mid-level League B team, but it worked to their advantage because they did get that golden ticket by winning their League C group, and then in the playoffs, they remarkably beat out Curaçao, which I considered the favorite of the playoff teams. They beat them on penalties, and then they went on to beat French Guiana on penalties as well. French Guiana, having been in their 2021-22 CONCACAF Nations League group. So they beat them on penalties as well. So well done, St. Kitts and Nevis, finding a spot in the Gold Cup through the golden ticket. Okay, so we can expect that they'll be fairly weak in the Cup, but I'm sure they're delighted to reach there. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the squad. So we begin with their manager, and their manager is an ex-player. It's Austin Huggins. So he was a player during their good period in the 1990s. So he played with them from 1993 to 2004, and he earned 36 caps and a very respectable 11 goals. And in terms of a manager, he's been manager of St. Kitts and Nevis since 2022, and he was manager of a club in St. Kitts and Nevis, Garden Hotspur from 2018 to 22, and that's it as far as his managerial experience goes. So he'll be leading them through the cup. And we move on to goalkeepers. So we have a definite candidate in Giuliani Archibald. So Giuliani Archibald has been with the team since 2008. So one of the veterans on the team. He has 50 caps for St. Kitts and Nevis and is 32 years old. And he plays for Lorca in Spain. Not a lot of them play outside of the country, but he is a bit of a traveler. He was also playing in Malta and Honduras, and for quite a while with W Connection in Trinidad and Tobago. So in terms of recent performance, so we look from the beginning of 2022, he started 8 of their 9 games and was not selected for the other one. So he looks like a definite candidate to us. And I'm just going to make the picture a bit bigger here. Okay, and we have a likely candidate in Jamal Francis, who seems equally often as known as Jamal Jeffers. And he has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2015. And he is 30 years old and has 13 caps and plays for St. Paul's United, one of the clubs in St. Kitts and Nevis. And he returned actually after an almost 2.5-year absence in March 2022. And he started one of their remaining 9 games prior to the Cup and was on the bench for 5 and not selected for 3 others. So we think he is a likely candidate. And then we have a possible candidate in the very young Xander Parker. Xander Parker has just come into the team. I'll tell you about that. He is born in 2004, and I keep saying Parker, but it's Park. Xander Park is 19 years old, and he did play for the Shrewsbury Youth Club and was with Stoke Youth Club in England before that, but I looked to see if he was born in England, and I didn't see anything that said that. So he may or may not. He is unattached from July 2023, so if he manages to get onto the field here, it'll be a good showcase for him. In terms of recent participation, he got his first appearance on the bench in June 2023, but didn't start any of their remaining 3 games, but was on the bench for all 3. So it looks like he's on the way in. On the other hand, the possible but unlikely candidate, Stephen Vibert, looks like he's on the way out. He also has no caps for the national team, and he's even younger at 18 years old. And he plays in St. Kitts and Nevis. And he got his first appearance on the bench in March 2023 and didn't start any of their games, but was on the bench for 2 games, but then not selected for the last 4 matches. And actually, Stephen Vibert isn't the only one they kind of tried out. They tried out a few keepers over the last year or so, and it looks like Xander Park, the most recent one, is the most likely candidate. But who knows? They may go back to one of the others. We picked Stephen Vibert as kind of the representative of those keepers. The other ones played earlier and were off the team since, so it doesn't look like they didn't even make our list here. Okay, those are our 4 candidates as goalkeeper, and we move on to defense. And we start with central defenders. And we have a definite candidate in Andre Burley. So Andre Burley has been with the team just since 2021. And he is 23 years old and has 10 caps. And he plays for Oxford City in England. And actually, there's kind of a class of players with St. Kitts and Nevis who play for very small clubs in England, and it looks like they were kind of recruited as several Caribbean teams are doing, looking in England and other countries for people with connections to the country. So it looks like Andre Burley is that, and it was successful because he's been with the team since 2021 and started 8 of their 9 games since the start of 2022. So he looks like a definite candidate. Dijon Simmons is a likely candidate, and Dijon Simmons joined since 2022. And is 23 years old also. And he just has 1 cap for the national team and plays for Keon. That seems to be the biggest team in St. Kitts and Nevis. And he got his first cap in March of 2022. And you may be wondering why he is a likely candidate. Well, he only played 1 game, but he was subbed in for another and was on the bench for 7 games. I have him also as not selected for 1, so my math is not adding up. Anyway, the key point there is he was, he didn't start a game, he was just subbed in. He was on the bench for 7 games, 7 of the 9 games. So he doesn't look like he's a starter, but he looks like he's called up regularly enough to be likely to make the squad. We have 2 possible candidates, make that 3. Jamil Ibel. Jamil Ibel has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2015, but he only has 3 caps for the team, and he's 29 years old. And I don't have a record of him being born in England, but it kind of looks like he was, because he's another who plays for small clubs in England, currently with Giselli in England and with Whitby Town before that, really small names. And he actually, interestingly, returned after a 7.5-year absence in March of 2023, so just recently, and started 1 of their remaining 6 games prior to the Cup. But he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. So once there, they used him regularly, and we consider Jamil Ibel a possible candidate. The next one is Ezric Nichols. So Ezric Nichols, also new to the team since 2022, and is 23 years old. And he just has 2 caps and plays for Tampa Spartans in the USA, not a big team there. It might be a university team, actually. He got his first appearance on the bench in June of 2022 and started only 1 of their remaining 8 games prior to the Cup, but he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4. So it looks like he's being regularly called up too. The other one I'm going to put as a possible candidate, although really he may be off the team, and it's the veteran Thrizon Leader. Thrizon Leader played with St. Kitts and Nevis for since 2004 and actually played his last game in 2021. So he has 76 caps and 1 goal. That is the 2nd most capped player for St. Kitts and Nevis. But he is 38 years old. But he is still playing club soccer, on the other hand, for St. Paul's United, who he's been with for 10 years. So my thinking was that having reached the Cup, they may make room for such a veteran, kind of call him back to the national team. So I put him as a possible on that basis. So we'll see if they do that. We are going to meet the most capped player a little later. But for now, we move on to left backs. And for left backs, we only have a possible candidate in Raheem Hanley. So Raheem Hanley has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2018, and he has 9 caps and no goals for the team, and is 29 years old. And another player who plays for small clubs in England, I never even heard of this one, Runcorn Linnets in England, and also teams Staybridge Celtic, which I had heard of, and New Mills, but they're very teams way down in the divisions there. Anyway, Raheem Hanley returned after a year-long absence in March 2023 and started 4 of their remaining 6 games, and was on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1. So again, kind of making a late entry, maybe in preparation for these these playoff games, because I don't imagine they were that confident they'd reach the final, or that they would reach the cup. Anyway, we have a couple of players who seem to be off the squad, and the first is Mikel Hurst. So he has no caps for the national team, and he is 22 years old, and he plays again for small teams in England, Romulus and Hednesford, teams that I'm again not really aware of. And he got his first appearance on the bench in March 2023 and didn't start any of the 6 remaining games, but he was on the bench for the first 2. However, he was not selected for the last 4, so kind of came in quickly and went. Actually, to me, that seems possible but unlikely, so I'm going to move him up a rung to possible but unlikely. And we have one more player who seems to be off the squad, and that is Petrus Williams. So Petrus Williams has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2017, and he has 9 caps for the team and plays for St. Paul's United in St. Kitts and Nevis. He was with Portland Timbers under-23 team in the USA also. And he started 3 of their 9 games prior to the Cup, but was not selected for the last 6 of those. So we think he may be off the squad. All right, for right backs, we have a likely candidate in Malik Roberts. Well, Malik Roberts has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2021, and he is 21 years old, so quite young, and he has 7 caps, so really making his way into the team. Still playing in St. Kitts and Nevis with Keon, and he started 5 of their 9 games since the start of 2022, as well as subbing in for 1. And it was 3 matches that he wasn't selected for, but that was the first 3 of those 9. So selected for the last 6 matches, we consider Malik Roberts a likely candidate. And we do have one who seems to be off the squad, and that is Ordell Flemings. So Ordell Flemings was with the team since 2015, and he has 13 caps for the national team. And he is 28 years old, so not aged out. He also plays for St. Paul's United in St. Kitts and Nevis, but he last appeared for the team in June of 2022, so that's a year that he hasn't been called up, and they have played quite a few games in that time. All right, well, the last of our defenders is a kind of undefined defender, just on several websites. He's just listed as a defender rather than something more specific, and it is Kareem Harris, and he has been with the team since 2008, and he has 17 caps for the team. He's 36 years old, 35 years old. He plays for St. Peter's United, so still playing club soccer, and impressively, he returned to the national team after a 9.5-year absence in March of 2022. And then he started 2 games and was on the bench for 1, and then kind of disappeared for the last 6 matches there. So Kareem Harris making a comeback, but then falling off the team again. And we think he's off the squad. All right, we move on to midfielders, and we're going to start with defensive midfielders. And we have 2 likely candidates. One is Raheem Summersall. Raheem Summersall. And he's been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2017. And has 17 caps for the team and is 25 years old. No goals. He plays for North Carolina FC in the United States, and has played for other teams in America as well. He started 6 of their 9 games since the start of 2022, and wasn't selected for the other 3, and that's why we have him as a likely candidate rather than a definite one, because he missed 3 games there. Okay, Gerard Williams is also a likely candidate, and this was the veteran I was referring to. So he's the most capped player for St. Kitts and Nevis in their history, with 79 caps and 2 goals. So Gerard Williams has been with the team since 2006, and excuse me, he is 35 years old. So I'm glad that he got into their first Gold Cup here, and I'm hoping the other veteran will too. And Gerard Williams plays for, I don't know how to say it, TRAU or Trau in India. It's all capital letters. And that's actually his second stint with them. He's been with them the second time since 2021 and was with Keon in St. Kitts and Nevis before that. But he did spend almost 10 years with W Connection in Trinidad and Tobago, probably the biggest team there. And Gerard Williams started 6 of their 9 games since the start of 2022 and subbed in for 1 besides. But he missed 2 matches, and one of them was the last match that they played. So I hope that's not a bad sign, but we still consider him a likely candidate. Okay, Lewis Mervyn, we have as a possible candidate, and he has been with the team since 2019. Sorry, I think I said Lewis Mervyn there, but it's Mervyn Lewis, and he's 22 years old, and he has 3 caps. So he's with Keon in St. Kitts and Nevis, and he returned after a 2-year absence in March of 2023, and didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. So that makes Mervyn Lewis a possible candidate, in our opinion. And another possible candidate, Lois Maynard. Lois Maynard has been with the team longer and has 20 caps. He's been with the team since 2015, and he's 34 years old, so getting up there in age. And he is one of the players born in England and playing for small clubs in England. Actually, in his case, some of the bigger clubs compared to other players. He's with Radcliffe Borough in England now. That's a recent move from Oldham Athletic, which is a more familiar name. And he also played for Stockport County in England. So those are bigger names. And he started 3 of their 9 games since the start of 2022, but wasn't selected for 6 others. So we can only put Lois Maynard as a possible candidate here. Even less likely, though, is Kamari Rogers. Kamari Rogers has been with the team since 2015, and he has 28 caps and 5 goals. And he is 28 years old, I believe, 28 years old, and plays for Village Superstars in St. Kitts and Nevis. And he returned after a year-long absence in March of 2022, and he started 3 of their remaining 9 games prior to the Cup. But he wasn't selected for the last 6 matches. In fact, he wasn't even listed. That's a little bit different. Rather than being listed as not on the squad, he just isn't listed at all. So I've seen that when players have retired or quit the team or something like that. So I wonder if that's what that means, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Anyway, we have Kamari Rogers as a possible but unlikely candidate. And then a little bit sadly, Theo Wharton seems to be off the squad. I kind of have a soft spot for Theo Wharton because he was actually born in Wales. That's where I grew up. And he plays for Welsh teams recently, Newton in Wales and Barrytown in Wales. And that's the Welsh League rather than someone like Cardiff playing in the English League. He plays in the Welsh League. He did play for English teams before that, Hereford and Nuneaton. And Theo Walton was with the team from 2016 to 21, and he has 19 caps. And he's not kind of overaged here. He's 29 years old. No, hang on, 25 years old. I have two different reports here. So I'll just leave the age things alone, maybe update it when I come back. And he last appeared for the team in June 2021. So it looks like he played for St. Kitts and Nevis for a while, but now isn't. And I'm a little sad about that. He seems to be off the team. Okay, we move on to central midfielders, and we have Johannes Mitchum as a definite candidate. And Johannes Mitchum has been with St. Kitts and Nevis for since 2017, and he's 25 years old, and he has 27 caps and 1 goal, so one of their key players there. And he plays for Newtown United in St. Kitts and Nevis, but he was loaned actually to Puebla, a fairly big team in Mexico in 2018 and 19, but then came back to St. Kitts and Nevis. And he has started all 9 of their games since the beginning of 2022. So that is pretty good, and so that makes him a definite candidate for us, Johannes Mitchum. That's all we have for central midfielders, believe it or not. So it's probably going to be players from other positions kind of filling in a little bit there. And we do have a left midfielder, but only at the possible level, and that's Kalonji Clark. And Kalonji Clark has been with them since 2021 and is 22 years old. Just 4 caps and 1 goal to his name, and another play with St. Paul's United, which seems to, along with Keon, seems to be one of the big clubs in St. Kitts and Nevis. And Kalonji Clark started none of their 9 games since the start of 2022, but he was subbed in for the first 3. On the bench for 2, and then not selected for the last 4 matches. So he seems to have been drifting off the squad over the past year, but we still have him as a possible candidate. Less likely is Gavon Amori. So Gavon Amori has been with the team since 2016 and has 15 caps and 2 goals, and he's 26 years old, so not aged out. And he plays for Village Superstars in St. Kitts and Nevis. He was gone for 4 years and then returned after a 4-year absence in March 2022 and subbed into 1 of their games, but then not even called up or even listed after that. So Gavon Amori, possible, maybe even between possible and seemingly off the squad. Maybe we were a bit generous there, because it would be a surprise to see him return. Okay, on to right midfielders, and maybe one of these guys will. It looks like one of these players must still in the central midfield, because we have 2 definite candidates. Oh no, we just have 1. It's Omari Sterling James. Omari Sterling James has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2017, and he has 16 caps and 4 goals and is 26 years old. He's another born in England and playing for small clubs in England, actually born in Birmingham, England, and there seems to be maybe a little pocket of St. Kitts and Nevis people there, because he's not the only one born in Birmingham or playing for Birmingham. He himself, though, plays for smaller clubs, Ebbsfleet United and Kidderminster Harriers in England. And he's been around scoring goals in qualification since the 2019 Gold Cup, and he started 7 of their 9 games since the start of 2022 and was not selected for the 2 others. So we consider Omari Sterling James a definite candidate. And he's the only candidate as right midfielder. I thought we had 2, but actually the other one is a left winger, also a definite candidate, and it's Takani Williams. Takani Williams has been with the team since 2021, and he is 21 years old, with 6 caps and 1 goal. And he plays for a team called Old Road Jets in St. Kitts and Nevis there. That's his second stint with them, and he started 6 of their 9 games since the start of 2022 and was not selected for 3 matches, but that was for the first 3 matches, so he's been a starter for the last 6. So we consider Takani Williams a definite candidate. Over to right wingers, we have a likely candidate. A likely candidate in Jacob Hazel. And Jacob Hazel has been with them since 2016, and he has only 4 caps in that time. And he's 29 years old, and he plays for Darlington in England, and then prior to that, some very small clubs too. So Darlington's a bit of a move up from Whitby Town and Frickley Athletic. He was off the team for 7 years, so he returned after a 7-year absence just recently in June of 2023 and started 3 of their remaining 4 games prior to the Cup and subbed in for another. So making a late comeback, probably in preparation for the playoffs, and Jacob Hazel now a likely candidate. And we also have a possible candidate in Tyrese Shade. So Tyrese Shade, brand new to the squad. He's 23 years old though, and he has 2 caps and plays for Swindon in England, and actually played for Leicester, was on the Leicester squad from 2017 to 2022, although he didn't play any games for Leicester. He was loaned out, at least in 2021, to Walsall in England. So was training with Leicester, basically. He's another who was born in Birmingham, England, and he got his first cap in March 2023. So maybe one of those players coming out of a recruiting scrape. His first cap in March 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 6 games and subbed in for 1, but he's not selected for the last 6 matches. So he looks like a good candidate given his club affiliations, but hasn't really made it into the squad. So we have Tyrese Shade as just a possible candidate here. And that brings us to the end of midfielders. And we move on to forwards, starting with attacking midfielders, where we have a definite candidate in Romain Sawyers. So Romain Sawyers, I also have a soft spot for because he plays for Cardiff in England. That's my club. And so we're well aware of Romain Sawyers. He's been with Cardiff since 2022. He's been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2012. So, so he is not, he's born in Birmingham, England too, by the way, but he is certainly not a product of a recruiting scrape. Rather, he's been pretty loyal to St. Kitts and Nevis for a long time, in fact, playing with their under-23 team when he was younger. So he has amassed 35 caps and 6 goals for St. Kitts and Nevis. And as I said, plays for Cardiff since 2022 and was with West Bromwich Albion in England for his second spell with them, actually, before that. So there we go. He started 7 of their 9 games since the start of 2022. He wasn't selected for 2 matches, but they were the first 2. And honestly, it's not just because he plays with Cardiff, but it would be unthinkable for him not to be at the Cup. Romain Sawyers. Okay, a likely candidate is Taekwon Terrell. And Taekwon Terrell has been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2018 and is 25 years old with 10 caps and 2 goals. And plays for St. Peter's United in St. Kitts and Nevis. So he also was absent for a while, but returned after a 2.5-year absence in March of 2022. And he started 3 of their remaining 9 games prior to the Cup. And he subbed in for 4 and was on the bench for 2. So he played all 9 games after his return. So we consider Taekwon Terrell a likely candidate. All right, they don't have any players coded as secondary strikers, so we move on to our last category, forwards. And we have quite a few players here. We have 2 likely candidates and 3 possible ones. So the first likely candidate is Carlos Berti. So Carlos Berti with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2016 and is 27 years old with 17 caps and 3 goals. So he plays for Keon in St. Kitts and Nevis and actually on his 3rd spell with Keon. And started one of their 9 games. So he just started 1 game since the start of 2022. But he also subbed in for 5 and was on the bench for 3. So always called up, probably not a starter. But we consider him a likely candidate to make the squad. And I probably should have started actually with Freeman, Keithroy Freeman, because he is more of a starter. He's been with St. Kitts and Nevis since 2016 and is 29 years old. He only has 12 caps, though. Mind you, he's done well when he's there because he's got 6 goals. So he's 50% scoring average right now, which is very good. And he plays for St. Paul's United in St. Kitts and Nevis for over 12 years. So he started 5 of their 9 games since the start of 2022, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 3 others. So maybe even a bit of ahead of Carlos Berti, but both of them have been called up for all 9 games, all of their last 9 games. So Keithroy Freeman, a likely candidate. Tishan Hanley is a possible candidate. He's the first and most experienced of our possible candidates with 34 caps and 3 goals. So that's not a great scoring average. He's 32 years old and has been with the team since 2009. And he plays for a team called Prime Bangkok in Thailand. That, as far as I know, not one of the bigger teams in Thailand. But there he is since 2022 and played for Garden Hotspurs in St. Kitts and Nevis before that. So he would have played under the manager who became manager of St. Kitts and Nevis. He started one of their 9 games since the start of 2022 and was subbed in for 1, but then not selected for 7 others. So even the possible category is a bit generous for him, but he is a veteran with the team, so that maybe bumped him up a bit for us. Another veteran with the team is Harry Panelotu. Harry Panelotu has been with the team since 2014. And is 28 years old, and he has 30 caps and 11 goals. So his average is about 36% there, and that's a good scoring average. He plays for Aldershot in England since 2022, and he played for Livingston in Scotland before that. So another of those players that was born in England, but not a recent recruit in the case of Harry Panelotu. So we consider him a possible candidate and probably ahead of Tishan Hanley there. And finally, we have Rowan Liburd. And Rowan Liburd is newer to the team since 2019. And he's 30 years old, though, so a little older than Panelotu. And he is another born in England and playing for small teams. He played for Ramsgate in England and Chess Hunt teams. Wow, I've never heard of them, I got to say. But he did play for Chelsea's youth club in England up till 2010. And he as I said, 4 goals in 13 caps. He returned after a 2-year absence in June 2023 and didn't start any of the remaining games, but was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, so making a late comeback there. And there we go, Rowan Liebert. And finally, we have one candidate who seems to be off the squad, and that is Viceroy Nelson. So this is our last candidate, Viceroy Nelson, who has been with the team since 2015. He is 26 years old and has 13 caps and 2 goals. And he has played for the 2 biggest clubs that keep coming up here, St. Paul's and Keon, who he moved from in 2021 over to St. Paul's. However, he last appeared for the team in June of 2022 and has not been called up in the last year. So seemingly off the squad is Viceroy Nelson. All right, well, that is it for part 1. And we will be back in a couple of weeks for part 2. And we'll see which of these players made the final squad. All right, the preliminary and final squad has been released, so now we're able to do part 2 of this media cast. And for St. Kitts and Nevis, it was just a 37-man preliminary squad. They were allowed to select up to 60, but of course, a small nation like this probably doesn't even have 60 viable players. So 37-man preliminary squad. And okay, my little experiment with the black background is over because I didn't like the way the highlights looked on the highlights I'm about to show. So I'm back to white. And let's begin with the squad then. So Austin Huggins is the manager, and that didn't change in the short time since we did the part 1 there. So we'll consider him as having made the squad. Goalkeepers, we had Julani Archibald as a definite candidate. So we gave bio information on him in part 1. So we're just going to give the names here. We also explained why we thought they were at the level they're at, so a definite candidate. So, for example, he started 8 of their 9 games since the start of 2022, and that's why we thought he was a definite. So, if you want that information, you can check out part 1. A likely candidate, Jamal Francis, sometimes called Jamal Jeffers, did make the squad. And our possible candidate, Xander Park, also made the final squad. But our possible but unlikely candidate, Stephen Vibert, didn't make the squad. I talked in part 1 about a couple of goalies they were trying out, and a couple of others did make it, but did make the preliminary squad, but not Stephen Vibert. So we'll save those for the new candidates at the bottom of the media cast, or at the end, I should say. Okay, central defenders. We had a definite candidate in Andre Burley, and he did make the squad. And we had Dijon Simmons as a likely candidate, and he made the squad. And our two of the 3 possible candidates made the squad too. Jamil Ibel and Ezric Nichols. And I got to say, the 3rd candidate, I was more hoping that he'd make the squad because he's a real veteran with the squad. I thought they would possibly honor him by bringing him. But for whatever reason, he was not named even to the preliminary squad. So no room for places of honor, I suppose. Okay, so Jamal Ibel and Ezric Nichols, the possible candidates who are there. And we also have one new candidate just showing up on the list at the very end, and it is Rico Brown. So since we didn't talk about him in part 1, I'll quickly introduce him. He has no caps, and he is 20 years old, and he was with Birmingham Youth Club. So we talked in part 1 about a kind of a connection that St. Kitts and Nevis seems to have with Birmingham. He plays for the club, and actually he's moving from the youth club to the senior club in July of this year. So another one of those players born in England, and in his case, he hadn't even been on the bench for St. Kitts and Nevis before being named to the preliminary squad. But Rico Brown does make the Gold Cup there. Okay, for left backs, we had possible candidate Raheem Hanley, who did make the squad. Possible but unlikely candidate Mikel Hurst did make the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And I thought we had talked about seemingly off the squad William or Petrez Williams. His name wasn't on my list there, but I thought we talked about him. Anyway, he doesn't seem to be on the squad because he didn't even make the preliminary squad. Okay, for right backs, we had a likely candidate in Malik Roberts, and Malik Roberts did make the final squad. And we had a player seemingly off the squad in Ordell Fleming, and that proves out because he is not named even to the preliminary squad. And the last defender we looked at was Kareem Harris, who we thought seemed to be off the squad, and that is the case as he was not selected for the preliminary squad either. All right, on to defensive midfielders, where we had two likely candidates, and both of them made it, Raheem Summersall and the veteran Gerard Williams, both selected to the Gold Cup. And then we had two possible candidates. First one was Mervyn Lewis. He did make the final squad, but the other possible candidate, Lois Maynard, only made the preliminary squad. Okay, possible but unlikely candidate, Kimari Rogers. He did make the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And then we had a player who seemed to be off the squad, Theo Wharton, having last played in June 2021, but somewhat oddly made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. So seemed to be off the team, but isn't. If being named to the preliminary squad is any evidence that he's not fully off the team, but you'd think if he made the preliminary squad, he would also have made the final squad. But who am I to judge? Okay, central midfielders. We had a definite candidate in Johannes Mitchum, and Johannes Mitchum did make the final squad there. And that was the only central midfielder we had, surprisingly. So we go to we go to left midfielders, where we had possible candidate Kalonji Clark, and he only made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And Gavon Amory, who we had as possible but unlikely, didn't even make the preliminary squad. On to right midfielders, we have definite candidate Omari Sterling James, and we were right in our assessment. He did make the final squad there. And we also have a new candidate, so the second of our new candidates here, and it's Ronaldo Belgrove. So Ronaldo Belgrove, I'll give a little info on because we didn't meet him in part one. And he is a left midfielder. A right midfielder, and he doesn't have any caps for St. Kitts and Nevis. Actually, was not even called up to the bench before he was named to the preliminary squad. And he plays for FC Miami in the United States, but he did play in St. Kitts and Nevis before that. So he is 24 years old, and Ronaldo Belgrave, surprisingly, named to the squad there. Now we do move on to left wingers, and we have Takani Williams as a definite candidate, and he does make the squad. And we have and that's it for left wingers. For right wingers, we have a likely candidate in Jacob Hazel, and he was selected for the squad. But our possible candidate, Tyrese Shade, only made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. So even though he was on the Leicester team for 5 years, not making it to this tournament. Okay, among attacking midfielders, we said we would be shocked if Romain Sawyers didn't make it, and he did. make it to the final squad. And we had a likely candidate also as attacking midfielder in Tikan Terrell, and he also made the final squad. And those were the only two candidates we had. We didn't have anyone coded as a secondary striker, but we had quite a few forwards. So we start with two likely candidates, Carlos Berti and Keith Roy Freeman, and both of those make it to the cut. And we have Tishan Hanley as our first possible candidate. Actually, three possible candidates there, and only one of them made it. So Rowan Liebert did make the final squad, but the other two, Tishan Hanley and surprisingly Harry Paneotu, only named to the preliminary squad. I'm a bit surprised about Harrison Paneotu there. Okay, and finally, our last candidate was Vinceroy Nelson, who we considered seemingly off the squad. And the fact that he was not named even to the preliminary squad suggests that that is true. So we're going to finish out here with just some summaries of information. So first of all, notable non-selection. Sorry, my computer here is kind of reacting slowly. Okay, notable non-selections. Well, there are none. Everyone who was named to the squad, with the exception of a couple of new players, were either at the possible or likely or definite levels. So that's kind of common when it's a small team because they don't have a large pool to choose from. The closest thing we have to a surprise inclusion, so there were really no players who we thought were off the squad or who were possible but unlikely. None of those players selected for the final squad. One of them selected for the preliminary squad was Theo Wharton, so we were a bit surprised. He seemed to be off the squad. We were a bit surprised to kind of see him named here. And no, we don't need two headlines there. So new players. So we do have a couple of new players, and we saw Rico Brown and central defender and right midfielder Ronaldo Belgrove. Those two players making the final squad. They weren't on our list prior to that. And then there were five players who were not on our Soccer Files lists. And so they were only named to the preliminary squad, though. So we won't go through those names, but two of them were goalkeepers, as I mentioned in the goalkeeper section. Some of those goalkeepers they were trying out did make it to the preliminary squad. But all in all, very few surprises here for St. Kitts and Nevis. We bringing who we thought they would bring, and also lucky in terms of injuries because we have no injuries to report for St. Kitts and Nevis. So yes, all of those players were healthy. So that brings us to the end of our look at St. Kitts and Nevis, and I hope this helps you to enjoy the tournament that much more. All the best.